Okay, so hopefully this is my last video that I'm bringing you because I will be able to join you guys after Tina goes on her conference next week. So enjoy my last shenanigans here. The first article that I'm going to talk about is from the Art and Science of Teaching. It's an article by Mr. Marzano, and he talks about targets, objectives, standards, and how they fit together. And so what he had kind of talked about was, besides having something to do with what the students have to learn, there has to be a way for them to fit together. And so this is kind of a recommendation paper on what districts or schools in general, separate buildings in general, should do to keep that consistent language throughout. And that's one of the things that we're doing at Melville right now. We're transitioning into a PLC school, so we have very common vocabulary between us saying that there's an essential question, there are learning targets, and then there's also the common vocabulary. So he has 5 major recommendations. One of them is the internally consistent system, which is what I just talked about, is making sure that if you're not at a district-wide system with district vocabulary, then you have it at the building level, where all your teachers are the same across the board. His second recommendation is that start with objectives that focus on a single unit of instruction. So it should be something that the students can do in one single lesson. So there's 2 different types of objectives that he mentions. One is a declarative objective, and these are the informational ones. These are the ones where it might be explain the generalization of a region's geography to have a significant effect on a country's future. So that's something that's informational. That's what you can declare. And then there's a procedural objective, which addresses the skills and processes. So it might be a strategy for refusing things that might be detrimental to your health. So a strategy for saying no to drugs or something like that. That is a procedural objective. Number 3 is breaking the objective into a learning progression. So a learning progression that has very definite areas where you can go into either the declarative or the procedural objectives. So if you were a social studies teacher, they said that you could break down your whole unit and maybe describe how geography discussed in class affected those countries' futures, described how geography has affected those that you have not discussed in class, recall specific facts about certain parts of the land, explain basic terminology. Things like that are all breaking down one unit into simple steps. Suggestion 4 that he gives is using the learning progression to establish daily targets. So once you have that learning progression, like I just said before, then you can identify what your daily targets are going to be. So they might spend one focus on just talking about vocabulary terms, and then the next day it might be just talking about the geography of this region. And those learning targets can span over the several days, but at least you're breaking them down into smaller segments. And then teachers don't have to address the element in a linear fashion. You know that you're eventually going to get to this end goal, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a linear fashion. You can jump around as long as all those learning targets are getting met. And then the 5th suggestion that he has is translating daily targets into student-friendly language. Typically when we as teachers talk about the standards, they're all this mumbo-jumbo that's teacher talk, and it does not get translated to the students. So turning those targets into I can statements, then the student knows what it is that they're supposed to do. So one of the examples they said is, I can say no, but also let the person know that I'm not mad at them. So that's something that a student would have to do in that health class when they're trying, maybe refusing drugs or alcohol or something under peer pressure. They can still say no and not have that kid be mad at them. And one of the things Marzano says is that by having those I can statements, the students can see where they are in the learning progression, and they know they can go ahead and check it off. Well, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. And so that helps them see where their target is. Any system that organizes what the students are expected to know and be able to do enhances student learning. So if you're turning all of our learning targets, which are in the teacher talk, into student talk by making them I can statements, they should be able to know where they are on the spectrum and give clarity to them on where they need to go.